Hey there, and welcome to the MetanetTV live stream for September 2019. I've got my special guest from nChain, Steve Shadders. Steve, how's it going?
Hi there, good to be here.
Now, before we go any further, I have to say we are cheating a little bit this month. This is not actually a live stream. We're pre-recording this on September 20th, 2019, so it's probably 1 week before everyone's going to be seeing this. If something really monumental happens in BitcoinSV in the next week and we're not talking about it, that's the reason why. So anyway, Steve, it's good to have you back. You did the first live stream I did back in May and haven't spoken to you since. So how you been?
Yeah, I've been well. I forgot that it was actually the first one until you mentioned it to me before, but I see it's carried on and grown as time has gone on. So
we got a lot bluer too.
Back here.
Excellent. And we're heading out of the silly season now, so it's it's the end of summer. To be honest, news was probably getting a little bit slow. People were talking way too much about court cases and arguing on Twitter and things like that. So what's actually been happening around nChain lately?
Well, I mean, nChain's just a little machine that keeps on grinding away in the background, no matter whatever else is going on. Our engineering teams have been busy, as has our research and professional services teams. The research team has been doing a lot more work on fleshing out, I guess, extensions on Metanet, some of which I'm sure you start to hear about in the coming months.
Yeah, looking very forward to that.
The engineering team has been going through, growing pains, which is a good thing because it means growing.
Yeah.
Turns out it's just as challenging to scale an engineering team as it is to scale a Bitcoin node.
Funny that.
But that's all going really well. We're in a spot now where we can take on a lot more projects. And quietly in the background, things like Merchant API and Miner ID have been being worked on, Nextendo SDK, and of course BitcoinSV, big focus for us. So our engineering team is frantically putting the finishing touches to a release, which I'll probably talk about more at CoinGeek, and busy getting to work on the preparations for the Genesis upgrade next year.
Right, yeah. So when do you have to have do you call it the release candidate for Genesis? When does that have to be ready?
We want that out in November, ideally early November, but realistically it's probably going to be end of November. That gives us 2 solid months of testing on the public test network, which and on testnets, which will be specially commissioned for this upgrade. So anyone will be able to participate in that testing. These kinds of upgrades are a little bit different to a regular software release because you actually need a testnet. You kind of need 2 testnets actually. You need one testnet that's sort of manually set to have already activated the upgrade, and then you need another testnet that constantly switches between just before the upgrade and just after the upgrade, so that you can test that kind of transition cycle. So, but we've done these sorts of upgrades a few times before, a couple of times with Bitcoin Cash, once in the middle of a hash war, and another one just a couple of months ago. So we've got a pretty good idea how to operate these kind of processes and get them done with minimal disruption and hopefully maximum safety.
I mean, it's actually kind of nice to be able to do an upgrade and not have a hash war going on in the background.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly a bit less of a distraction. Last year, I mean, we were, not only did we have that going on, we had a brand new team, only a couple of months old, and a not insignificant set of code changes. So yeah, that was pretty challenging, and that team itself had not sort of contributed all of the infrastructure, testing infrastructure, etc. to a process like this before, because previously that had kind of been a collaborative effort amongst all the Bitcoin Cash teams. So yeah, it was a lot going on, but yeah, thankfully now they've done it a couple of times, so it's just like going through the motions again.
Excellent. Well, Genesis is the big one. That's the one everyone's been looking forward to. It's the one everyone knows the name of. And so after that, the protocol is locked. Is that so? How locked is locked? Like it never changes again?
Well, no, not quite. This is one of those things that gets lost in translation.
Right. Oh, please explain it to the non-techies
there
like
are
me.
a couple of minor things that will still need tweaking, and I've been trying to push this message over the last few months so that people didn't get the wrong idea. It won't be the last protocol changing hard fork, but probably will be the second last.
Right.
I would expect another one maybe late next year, but the things it will be changing will be pretty minimal. Like they're not the kind of things that are going to affect anyone who's developing on top of it. Just unblocking other limitations and really kind of minor things that have been put in over the years. The one that is potentially significant would be reverting the difficulty adjustment algorithm back to the 2-week cycle. That was originally changed when Bitcoin Cash came into being with the EDA and then modified to the DAA.
Right. So the EDA was that was specifically put there to prevent, a chain death. If too many miners switched from, say, BCH to BTC. Is that correct?
Yes, precisely. And in fact, it's an interesting topic actually, because the timing of reverting to the original Satoshi difficulty adjustment algorithm is a little bit dependent on transaction volume. Maybe I should just walk through this chain death scenario, because it has actually been done deliberately in the past by a certain pool operator over on BTC to wreck a few altcoins. So the theory goes, well, it's not a theory, it's practice. You move a ton of hash power over onto a blockchain that's got very little hash power. You mine it like crazy for a couple of weeks until a difficulty adjustment happens. Actually, you won't have to mine it for a couple of weeks. You need to mine it for 2016 blocks. And if you suddenly increase the hash power by a factor of 20 or 100, then you're going to mine 20 or 100 times faster. So you might do it for 2016 blocks, which is a difficulty adjustment period, or you might do it for several difficulty adjustment periods. And the difficulty goes way, way, way up. Then you take all your hash power, go back to BTC, and you've got this tiny fraction of miners left over trying to mine this chain with enormous difficulty. So instead of mining a block every 10 minutes, they might be mining a block every week. And you've still got to get through the 2016 blocks before you get another difficulty adjustment downwards. And even that doesn't get you out of trouble, because there's a limit to how far the difficulty can actually adjust in one hop. So what usually would happen is someone does the maths and goes, okay, we're going to be living along for 3 years before we can get back to regular difficulty, and all the miners just pack up and go home, and the chain dies. Now that's that kind of works in the paradigm where block rewards are the same, largely the same, no matter how long the time in between blocks, which is the case when you have a block subsidy of 50 Bitcoin or 25 or 12 and a half, as we have now, and transaction fees are, a fraction of a Bitcoin. But when you've got high transaction volume and tons of transactions pouring in, the accumulated fees for the rewards for a block actually increase as time passes. So if you get into a scenario like this and there's reasonable transaction volume, initially the reward is not significant, but over time it builds and builds and builds. And it might still take an hour, it might take 2 hours, might take 10 hours, I don't know. But eventually, the reward will build to a point where it's lucrative enough that the BTC miners will come back and try and mine that block, probably with significant hash power to snatch that reward. If you're working in a world where zero conf is considered pretty much as good as one confirmation, it doesn't really affect too many use cases. You can sit there and wait for an hour or 2 hours for a block, and you can still kind of carry on doing business. Particularly when we get rid of the limit on chain transactions, or the ancestor limit, which is well-known issue for app developers right now. So everyone can kind of carry on, and the incentives of this kind of growing reward almost solve the problem for you. In fact, they may actually start causing problems on the BTC side during that period until difficulty sort of restabilizes.
Right, and so Bitcoin Cash will retain their difficulty adjustment mechanism, and BSV is going to go right back to the start. They're going to take it away. So, how much of a risk do you actually think that is? Like, in a normal scenario, like it would sound doubtful, but in a situation where you have these, 3 competing Bitcoins, and each one of them would dearly love to like wipe the other one out through fair means or foul. How much do you think anyone would try that?
It very much depends on that constant stream of transaction fee revenue. If it's significant enough, then it's probably a non-issue, and especially by then our zero conf situation is going to be light years ahead of every other chain. Probably it might happen once because they may not realize. They probably wouldn't have thought through the implications of the difference between a blockchain that's driven by transaction fees and a blockchain that's driven by block rewards. But I think after the first time, the first kind of example, then they would probably work out what was going on and realize it was pointless.
Was that something that was baked into Bitcoin economics right from the start? I mean, Satoshi could have maybe predicted that kind of thing might happen one day, and that you could get, like 2 weeks with no transactions or no blocks being confirmed.
I think the 2 week cycle, I think the 2 week period was probably chosen with a reasonable amount of deliberateness. It seems like a long interval.
Yeah.
It seems like quite a long interval. And I struggled with it and wondered about it for years. Why on earth did he pick this, this long adjustment period? Because I mean, it's all sorts of other oddities that it potentially creates as well. With rising hash power, the block intervals aren't actually 10 minutes; they'll be shorter. With falling hash power, the block intervals are going to be longer, and they're not going to fix up for quite some time. So the fact that this sort of choice was made to pick this long interval, which seems a bit odd when you look at it on the surface. It's just one of those things that hints to me that he probably thought of something that we didn't. And this is one of those things, I think. The resilience of the network when we have scale is so much more. Maybe he didn't think of this specific instance, because the one thing I think Satoshi maybe didn't anticipate was the existence of many Bitcoins or many Bitcoin lookalikes. But I think he certainly did think about the resilience of the system under a transaction fee driven economy rather than a block reward based economy.
Yeah, indeed. All right, well, let's talk CoinGeek, because that's the topic on our minds at the moment, and you and I will both be heading to Seoul next Saturday or Sunday, and is it going to be a big one? Do you think bigger than Toronto?
I have no idea. I used to do sort of somewhat different style of events management in my 20s,
Uh-huh.
more in um, the nightclub area than in the Bitcoin area.
Oh, really?
And the one thing I learned was never ever try to predict numbers. So,
Ah, yeah.
but I mean, and I know of a bunch of people that are going, and I'm definitely excited to be catching up with a lot of them. I'm really interested to kind of reconnect with a lot of the app developers that are out there. I wasn't able to make it to Cambrian SV or some of the other meetup events that have happened around. But yeah, it's good for me to sort of touch base, find out where they're at with not just with their projects, but with their sort of learning process around Bitcoin, etc. Um, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It's always a good time to meet a lot of old faces and a few new ones.
Yeah, well, this is actually going to be the first CoinGeek that I'll be attending in person. So since we're here, I just want to take the chance to say a big thank you to everyone who donated to the little fundraiser I did for the BitcoinSVtrain channel to go to
Mm.
CoinGeek. Yeah, that really helped a lot. And I just wanted to thank in particular Wall Street 5 and Mr. G from Pixel Wallet, Alex Agut
Mm.
from Handcash, and actually yourself, Steve. So thank you very much. It's
No
much
worries.
appreciated and it helps a lot.
Mm.
Just slipping in
No.
my own plug for a different channel, which is still me. So yeah, let's
You'll be chasing everyone around with a microphone and a camera
yeah, I'm gonna be
during the
annoying.
conference.
I'm gonna be annoying the
Yeah,
crap out of everybody, as I usually
you'll
do.
be that pet. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I am. I am a professional pest at conferences. I'm gonna have bright lights. I'm gonna have cables. I'm gonna be tripping over them. The works. You know,
You can't be any worse than the CoinDesk guy that kept chasing me around the last time I had to go to Florida.
really. Wow, you know, you got to be
Yeah,
pushy to be
he
number
was
one.
looking for quotes on legal matters.
Uh,
He didn't seem to understand the meaning of no comment. So.
really? I didn't know. CoinDesk is getting all doorstoppy now, are they?
Yeah.
Man, things have changed. Well, I mean, let's just, without giving away any spoilers, because I know nobody wants to do that, let's just run through a few of the things that are happening at CoinGeek. So you're going to be doing a presentation on the road to Genesis, and that's actually going to be like one of the first presentations. Are you able to share
Yes.
any?
Myself and Dan Connolly
Yeah.
will be up first. I'm not sure if we decided among ourselves on the precise order of things, but we'll be talking about Genesis and a little bit about the zero conf picture. I really kind of wanted to focus on that because a lot of the components that I've talked about in the past, as I've sort of presented the big picture strategy for it, are so close to fruition now, or some of them actually already are. But I've talked about it too many times before, so to temper that a little bit.
Yeah.
But it is one of the sort of that subjects that I'm really kind of quite passionate about. It was largely a disagreement on how to approach zero conf that's led to many of the disagreements in the past Bitcoins.
Mm. What were the
I'm keen to
disagreements
get a
over?
solution there. Just sort of different approaches, which I think betray a lot about the mindsets of people. I mean, this notion of a secondary mempool where nodes keep transactions that even if they're not planning on mining them, so that they can respect the first seen rule and avoid a very kind of common attack, a double spend attack vector that's been demonstrated on BCH before. Some people argue you can't do that because it opens up this like attack vector that lets you just fill up people's memory and whatnot. And there's just such simple mitigations for that sort of thing. But I guess the fundamental difference is between that's what I call the real crypto nerds, who feel that if a solution has to be mathematically perfect, or it might as well be useless. And we actually saw this exact type of thinking on Bitcoin Core, where Peter Todd was so convinced that that zero conf was not perfectly safe, that he took the RBF approach, which he actually referred to openly as a scorched earth policy. Said, well, we can't make zero conf perfectly safe, so we're going to make it so unsafe no one will ever dare to use it.
Interesting strategy.
And then there is the other kind of philosophical approach, which is very much my approach, which I actually say, might have tweeted this a few months ago actually. In engineering, good enough is often better than perfect. In the sense that, well, in two ways. One, if you do try to be perfect, you're at real risk of never having a solution. And if you abandon the good enough approach, then there's a good chance that you're going to take 10 times as long to deliver something. And if you're relying on the fact that it is perfect, there's a good chance you're going to find out later that it isn't. So
yeah, so don't let the perfect be the enemy.
These kind of philosophical differences and divides, I guess. And that is where, the Bitcoin SV sort of vision is firmly on that side. Zero conf security was never supposed to be 100%. It was meant to be good enough. It was meant to be better than the competition, substantially better than the competition. It can still be close to 100%, but what the purists seem to forget is that that 6 confirmations is actually not perfect security either. It's just a random number that they picked and said, well, it's beyond a certain threshold, so we'll call that perfect.
Interesting, right. And can you give us any... All right, I know you can't give away any of the content of your presentation, but can you give us any teasers just so people will tune in?
Oh, no, I'm on perfectly safe ground here because I haven't even started writing my presentation yet. So,
all right.
I've got no teasers I could leak even accidentally. I mean, those are sort of the general themes. Well,
I mean, is it are you just going to be giving a progress report, or is it you're going to be
No, I think it'll be partially that, but also explaining some of the changes that haven't been explained too well yet. I might try and add a couple of interesting twists in there, but that's a project that's my weekend project actually. So if we'd done this interview a couple of days ago, you would have had a better chance of getting me to spring a leak. But otherwise, I mean, there's plenty of other really interesting stuff going on. I'm excited to hear from BitBoss. I probably regard them as one of the most serious players in the Bitcoin SV space. You don't hear a great deal from them because they just get their heads down and their bums up and they work and build. But they've released a keyring open source library, which is a foundation for a lot of the product they're building themselves in-house. Of course, no CoinGeek would be complete without hearing from Ryan X. Charles. Everybody loves his presentations, so I'm looking forward to that. And,
he's the high priest of Bitcoin.
And of course, there's the pitch day that's going on a couple of days before the conference, where people with ideas can basically come and pitch to a group of investors. That will be good to see what projects kick off. And last but not least, of course, the hackathon.
Yes.
The results of the hackathon will be decided and announced, and I guess a lot more detail about some of the hackathon finalists will come out.
So we've got 3 finalists now, I think. At least that's what I saw on the Bitcoin Association website. It was BitQ&A, Hive, and is it? How do you spell it? Is it CoinGeek Coda.
It apparently just pronounced Coda. Yeah,
Coda,
yeah.
right.
They lost points for the spelling.
And
Lost
so they
everything
should.
else about the project, but trying to pronounce that damn thing was a nightmare.
Just never put a GH in your word.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, three really interesting projects, and they're all kind of quite different. I mean, I don't want to reveal too much about them. Very high level. Hiver is basically a way of kind of connecting content online. Sorry, Hive, I mean Hiver. Coda is a mechanism that makes that other developer, or rather a platform, I guess, that other developers can use to make their APIs more available and more accessible in a very cool way. And BitQ&A is, I guess, crowdsourced knowledge gathering type platform. All of them have a few kind of really interesting and unique aspects to their designs. So I won't say too much more. I'll let the people behind the projects speak about them.
Yeah. Well, you and Craig Wright are going to be on the judging panel to judge the finalist for that. And I think that the winner gets something like, is it $35,000?
I think it's 25. I think it's 25 and then 10 for second place and 5 for third.
Oh, got you right. That's the prize pool. Yeah. Okay.
I'm not 100% sure actually. Let me just check. There is a website for that.
There is, yes. I had 35,000, but I wasn't sure if that was the total or if it was the winner. So what kind of things do you actually look for when you're looking for finalists in these? Do you go for variety, or do you go for, is it quality first or variety first, or just?
Sorry, it's denominated in Bitcoins actually. Right. It's 250 BSV, 100 BSV, and 50 BSV.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, what do we look for? I mean, there's a few judging criteria, and obviously some of them are a little bit subjective, I guess, in how you interpret them.
Yeah.
See, it's I mean, the design itself, obviously, we want to see a bit of creativity in the design, and more to the point how they addressed the theme. So I'm always really interested in projects that I think can work, no matter how technically impressive they are, or how fantastic the coding is, or whatnot. If the actual idea is something that strikes me as something that might actually make a difference and take hold in the market, then that's always going to get extra points from me. Code quality, of course, is another one. So you caught me on the hop here.
I mean, this is probably more for people who might be joining in future hackathons, not this one so much. If someone wants to participate in the future.
Here's the judging criteria. I should know these because I wrote this. Technology, how technically impressive is the product? Does it use any particularly inventive techniques? Design, whether the people actually put thought into the user experience. That's one that doesn't get neglected by a lot of
that's a big one.
Developers, including me. It just seems to be the dev mindset. You're either UX focused or you're back end focused. So you've got to kind of see a bit of that balance. Completion is also a factor because, I mean, hackathons are time limited. It's sort of somewhat of a measure of how much you can deliver.
Yeah.
It might actually be a proxy to measure how much Red Bull you drank, but that is a factor. And market fit, of course, is whether or not the product actually solves a real world problem, and whether it appears that there's an obvious market for it. So. And then I suppose there's the X factor, which is the subjective bit that the judges will get to apply for themselves.
We'll keep that one secret. But yeah, I mean, the criteria should be enough for anyone to go on. When is the third hackathon? This is number 2.
Um, I suspect it's not going to be until next year. I don't actually know exact date just yet. Yeah, there's a few kind of plans and things kind of going on around events that are going to be more developer focused during 2020. And hackathons will be, just one of that sort of suite of events. So that's sort of still in the planning stages at this point.
Yeah, and this is the Bitcoin Association hackathon. Like, just a heads up, there are several other mini hackathons going on around the world. I think we just had one in Barcelona recently too. It was the Valencia BitcoinSV meetup group was arranging that. I can't actually remember who won, but I just wanted to shout out to Ramon Casada, who's always sending me information and updates on that one. I hope he's watching this.
Sure. I did hear about a lot of these events going on in other places, and that's actually fantastic to see because it shows organic growth. I mean,
Yeah.
Bitcoin Association throws weight behind a lot of things, and that's great to sort of help us establish a foundation and a baseline. But it's when you actually see these other things just independently popping up that you realize that the momentum for Bitcoin SV is genuinely growing. And hackathons are tricky things to put on because of geographic restrictions. Cost people money to travel. There might be 1,000 people around the world that would like to go, but sometimes you can be lucky to get 5 in a room. Simply because of location. So the fact that they're pulling these off and they're happening successfully is awesome.
Yeah, I actually went to a hackathon, I think early last year in Miami for part of the Bitcoin North America conference. And as a non-coder, like the whole idea was kind of terrifying to me. Like to be put in a room and told you got to finish a project by a set time. And like all you can do is grab Red Bull or pizza. Yeah, I'm not sure if I can work under that kind of pressure.
This is actually what we've seen in some of the hackathons as well. Is not all the participants are coders,
right?
And that's kind of cool because it helps to maybe shoot down the myth that the only people that can get involved in Bitcoin are developers. There's a lot of different ways that you can sort of contribute to the ecosystem in general, or to the the success of a product with completely different skill sets.
You could do media, for example.
Indeed. You can be a professional pest. Yeah.
You can be a professional pest, yes. All right, so and there was also the Cambrian SV bootcamp in Bali. I mean, that's a few weeks ago now, and I haven't heard anything about it recently, but that was a massive success. It was much bigger than I was expecting. They had, over 14 companies and a few more individuals participating in that as well.
Yeah, from what I saw, they ended up with more people than I thought that they were planning on having.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be like 10 friends in a room.
Yeah,
but it was this massive.
I got a brief window into it. I made a small appearance by video conference for a Q&A session. But yeah, from what I've heard, there was. I think what people liked was just being able to sit in a room and even if they were working on their own projects, be able to work on Bitcoin stuff around other people so that they could interact and ask questions and with each other. So yeah, I hope to see more interactivity. I think between developers, and that's part of the reason why I'm keen to hang out with some of the app layer developers in Seoul, so that I can sort of touch base and see where they're all at.
Yeah, I think that's more the style of event that I could work out. I think more of a retreat than a hackathon or an under pressure event. So yeah, just where you get to hang out. There are beaches, there's bars, parties, that kind of thing. But yeah, just where you get to throw around some ideas.
It does sound counterintuitive, but working in a beachside place or by the beach on a laptop is often where I find myself most productive.
Yeah, it's been a while since I found myself on a beach with a laptop, but I'll take your word for it. So I think at that event at that event we had Twitch, Uptime SV, Tonic Power, Streamanity, our old friends at Streamanity, Agora, Mempool, Rate SV, and Legally Chained, among others. So yeah, they're all names we've heard a lot. Yeah, I look forward to more of those. Please, Jack and everyone else who's organizing those events, for one of those, and I will come to cover it for you. All right,
Maybe a bit closer to London next time, so I can go.
Yeah,
New York feels good.
I keep forgetting that Bali is a long way away from where you are now. I always think of Bali as somewhere like really close, but actually no. So yeah, just
it used to be when I lived in Australia, but not anymore.
How long's it been since you lived in Australia?
I arrived in London in May last year. So
right.
It's a bit over a year I've been over here now.
Have you adjusted to it well?
I'm going back for a month or so later this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just back there a couple of months ago. Oh no, last month actually. It was cold. But I haven't actually lived in Australia for about almost 20 years now, so I've kind of adjusted to it. I've adjusted to those mid-year summers.
So we'll see how I've adjusted. I'm going back right at the height of summer, so
right.
See how well I've acclimatized to cold weather.
I'm sure it will be literally on fire by the time you get there. Yeah, just going back to CoinGeek, I wanted to run through some of the other topics that everyone's covering there, because I think even if you're not going to CoinGeek, it's probably something you'll tune into. Do you know if CoinGeek are going to be running any live streams from the event?
Officially, no, I don't know. But by the time this goes online, probably officially I might know. So yeah.
From experience,
I think there will be. Yeah. I mean, they have it every other event, so
right.
It stands to reason that they probably will.
I think from past experience at conferences, you say, we'll be doing a live stream from the event if it works.
Something like that, yeah.
I know bandwidth at those convention centers is just like notoriously shaky. So you can promise all the live streaming you want, and then it just doesn't happen. But yep. Anyway, some of the presentation topics we got. You and Dan Connolly are kicking things off. We got the Script smart contract language for BSV. Future of data services in mining. That's a panel that you're actually moderating. So get ready for that.
Yeah.
BitcoinSV in China. That's one I'm particularly interested in, because until recently, I didn't even know there was a BitcoinSV scene in China. I knew there was a big BCH scene, but I didn't know how much of that had come over to the BSV side, because I hadn't really heard much about it.
In the lead up to November last year, we actually did a bit of outreach over there, because there was quite a lot of support for the kind of the big block movement, particularly the sort of going back to the original Bitcoin idea in China, including a substantial amount from miners as well. Miners are quite mercenary, and they will literally go where the money is. Many of them, but
it was designed that way.
A significant number of ones that were willing to actually take a hit to support BitcoinSV.
Interesting.
But Lin Zheming from Mempool has been a huge supporter of BitcoinSV. He set up Mempool, pretty much specifically for the purpose of supporting SV. And I think he's been a big player in terms of building up that community. And you're right, they're having kind of quiet, but sort of quiet achievers. Obviously, the language barrier is always a bit of a thing to get past. But the Mempool team, we discovered not very long after the hash war, we're working on a whole bunch of different stuff. They built a wallet that's embedded in WeChat. They built SVDB, which is a really cool sort of database adapter for the Bitcoin archival history. The more I hear about the sort of the China scene, the more active it appears to be. And I presume what we're seeing is probably just tip of the iceberg. We're seeing the stuff that actually gets released.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that's sort of under the surface. One of the things I saw most recently, which really impressed me, was not that fantastic a technical achievement. I just thought it was cool that someone had thought of that. Was WeBlock or YBlock, which was another Twitter type thing. And they'd stuck a translate button in there. And I'm sure they're probably just leveraging Google Translate or something like that in the back end. But the idea of being able to let East and West talk to each other in their own languages, even if it is through stilted machine learning translation, is just awesome. So I'm hoping to see a lot more connection between East and West.
If you've ever used
We asked Lynn what he thought we could do about improving those interactions when he was here last time for the wallet workshop. I'm not sure his suggestion is going to fly. For me, he said I should just learn Chinese.
I've seen people do it,
but I don't have 4 years to spare.
You could be like Vitalik and just do it during interviews.
Yeah, I suspect it's already sort of on the loose plans for next year that I'll probably go to China 1 or 2 times to try and connect with that community and see what we can do to help them move along and vice versa. So more to the point, see what we can do to help the products we're building get exposure over this side. Because if they're building infrastructure, there may well be great stuff that other Western devs can build on top of, like SVDB, for example.
Yeah, I found that eventually their local devs are just going to build things that suit their market. Like no matter where they're guided or what the needs are in other places, they're just going to build stuff for the China market, and it's quite interesting because you can get some inspiration from that as well. I mean, like the translate button.
It's a huge market too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even if the China SV world was kind of completely isolated and doing their own thing, and there was no chance of interaction, it's still a good thing because it's an enormous market. So
yeah, well, to me, it's kind of interesting to see these these two not isolated markets, but just two separate markets growing almost independently of each other, and the ways in which they're similar and different. It's quite fascinating because, I mean, Japan does that to a lesser extent, but I think Japan sort of interacts with the outside world a little bit more. It's easier to travel here, and people.
Yeah, and I think we have a lot of connections with Japan as well. So that certainly helps us to understand what's going on in that marketplace more easily.
Well, even the translate button that you mentioned before, that's something that's been built into WeChat for a while, and that's been invaluable. Some of those early Chinese Bitcoin chat groups, back in 2013 and 2014, like I would never have been able to see what was going on there without that translate button, even if it's not perfect.
Yeah,
it's better than having no comprehension at all.
Yes, indeed.
And speaking of WeBlock,
the reports that came out about some of the stress tests that were originating out of China were originally only sent out in Chinese. They did eventually get translated properly, but I was in a hurry to figure out what was going on, so they were useful.
Yeah,
useful tools for me.
Sometimes groundbreaking stuff happens over there that just don't even filter through to the outside world for another few months. I mean, back in 2013, like BTC China had the highest Bitcoin price ever, and no one even knew about it. It was actually higher than some of the ones on Mt. Gox, which was the biggest non-Chinese exchange at the time. And everyone always quoted the Mt. Gox price as the record, but BTC China actually had a much higher one.
Okay.
So I was always told.
Been during my dark years.
Yeah, well, because you couldn't actually trade there in dollars at the time, so no one really saw it. But yeah, speaking of WeBlock, like I only just discovered that the other day. How long has that been running?
I don't know because I also only just discovered it the other day.
Right.
I think maybe a couple of months, but yeah, I don't know for sure. Yeah. I think it's one of those things that just sort of percolated quietly in the Chinese community for a while,
Mm.
and then leaked out into the West, and everyone kind of got excited and started looking at it.
Yeah, I actually quite like it. I think to me it could be a viable alternative to Twitch. Now I know everyone loves Twitch. Not everyone loves Twitch, so I think it's one of those things you either love or you hate. But most people seem to love it. But for me,
Mm.
I like it. But
Mm.
I think some of the actions on it could be a little bit cheaper. And I know it's priced like that, on purpose for a reason. And the people who post there, they got to be making a noticeable
I'd
amount.
like to see the prices for actions be something that the user themselves can set. So if
Mm,
I post a Twitch, then it'd be nice if I could say, well, I'm going to charge this much to reply to me or whatever.
right.
So yeah, I like the general idea of these I guess we call it what it is, these Twitter clones that add a pricing model into it. I think there's more experimenting and tweaking with those models that can be done. The main reason I don't use Twitch a lot is because I'm really trying this year to spend more time speaking to people outside the Bitcoin SV world
Right.
than in it, because they're the ones that we kind of need to educate, and there's not a lot of that kind of market. It's very Twitch is very much
Mm,
a BSV supporters world. So I guess if they expand their reach a bit further, then it would become more interesting to me. Y-block I find interesting to me because it does allow me to access an audience that I otherwise couldn't, and hear what's going on in in areas that I've got no other way of finding out from.
yeah. I've also noticed that people post on Twitch and then they actually post the same thing on Twitter anyway, telling you to go and read it on Twitch. So
Yeah,
for most of the time, being able to stay abreast of everything just reading Twitter. So I haven't taken
yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, I occasionally get dragged over to Twitch because I see something interesting on a Twitch that's been sort of cross-posted or something to Twitter. So I'll go over there to see what the rest of the conversation is. But, I think that's a built-in feature of it. I think when you post a Twitch, you can click a button or something and it'll automatically tweet it for you
Yeah.
as well, or something like that.
Yeah, most of the time I'm not logged into Twitch, so all I see is that screen that says if you're reading this, you're not on Twitch.
Right.
It's like I am on Twitch, just not in this window. But
Right.
yeah. Okay, so we looked at CoinGeek. Come to CoinGeek or keep track of it. We'll be there covering it for you. And what else? We had the hackathons. Yeah, Wayblock. Oh yeah, Steve. Something you said the other day. Is there too much drama in Bitcoin SV?
I think what I would say is the one thing that's really struck me about Bitcoin SV, you know, group of people for a very long time was an almost complete absence of it.
Mm,
Like it was zero. And I've started to see a bit of it sort of creeping in over the last few weeks, couple of months or whatever. I'm not really sure what's behind it. Maybe it's just a natural evolution of groups of people kind of self-organizing and whatnot. But yeah, it does feel like there's a little bit of tribalism or something kind of creeping in. And I mean, crypto world is always probably going to have some element of that because it's full of developers, and the thing about developers is that they're always right.
Yeah.
When you stick a group of people in a room who are all individually always right, so then there's going to be inevitable clashes or differences of opinion. So I don't know, maybe it's just a normal thing, but I've really enjoyed not having any of it around. Most of the grief seems to come from the people in the BCH world that are still stalking us.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I made the comment because it felt to me like a bunch of people who I otherwise see normally being, really productive, seem to be getting distracted, and otherwise productive people kind of getting hounded a bit, and like I don't think that's necessarily a good thing if a toxic social situation ends up chasing someone away from doing work that's productive and beneficial to the entirety of the Bitcoin SV world. So
Yeah, I don't get it at all.
yeah,
I don't
I claim to have
really.
any magic solution to it. It was just an observation.
Yeah, I think it's just the nature of social media and platforms like Twitter, where like you can only make your point in a small space, and it's kind of a hit and run kind of environment. Rather than a conversation, you just gotta like it's like running into a room, shouting out what you've got to say in one sentence, and then running out again, and then you just
Yeah.
gotta wait for that retaliation, and then it just I think by its nature it just escalates really quickly, and that's it's kind of unhealthy, I think.
I think the part that gets up my nose a bit is it's more so seeing people react to stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of surprises me because in Bitcoin SV, if you walk into many of the online forums and declare that you're working on Bitcoin SV, you're probably going to get a lot of shit slung at you.
Oh yeah.
And I kind of assume everyone who's involved in this probably has built up a fair bit of resilience to that sort of thing. I mean, I know I have. It takes a lot to get under my skin. I mean, some of the crap that gets flung at me. I think in the last few weeks I've been called a moron and a perjurer and some other things that are quite a bit nastier than that.
Yeah, I can
And
imagine.
I guess I just learned for it to just slide off. It doesn't really impact me. So I think when I see people kind of reacting to that sort of negativity, it gets under my skin a bit because I feel like they don't need to. They kind of don't need to let it bug them. It really is a very effective strategy to just move on and get back to work. And that's it. It has no further effect on you or your life. So I guess I would love to see more people learn to be able to do that. I know it's not that easy. Sometimes something does get under the skin, but just if I had one message, I think for people, it's just keep your eyes on the prize.
Yeah.
We're all building toward a one thing. All for our own selfish reasons, just as Satoshi intended.
Yeah.
So keep on building and grab as much money or whatever it is that you want as you can.
Yeah. I mean, I think people take the into crypto rivalry a little bit too seriously sometimes. I know people have got a lot of money riding on this, but even then, like if you've got a lot of money riding on it, do it that way. Make your decisions with your dollars, or your coins or whatever. Like that, you're wasting time.
I understand people outside the Bitcoin SV attacking the Bitcoin SV community because we are a genuine threat to everything they hold dear. Inside the BSV worlds, though, I'm not so sure. I don't think anyone in BSV needs to worry about what's going on in BTC world or Zcash world or the BCH world or whatnot. Just they'll go they will meet their destiny, given enough time. They don't need any help from us. They're doing a perfectly good job of it themselves.
Turning on
so
other
the
people.
energy that we spend on trying to kind of fight external battles and whatnot is energy we could be spending building. because they're fighting the battle for us anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, just don't argue with people within the community, even if you disagree. Yeah, there's definitely other places to take that. Otherwise, it's just like peeing in the pool that everyone's sitting in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today's probably not the best day for me to be saying that, actually, because I'm tweeting a little bit too much today because someone on the internet was wrong, and that got under my skin.
Well, remember, we're recording this a week before anyone's actually going to see it, so it's all going to be water under the bridge by then.
It'll be over by then, yeah.
Either that or something really horrible has happened in the meantime, and we're going to look like complete hypocrites. But I doubt it. Yeah, don't argue with people on social media. It's I find it extremely unsatisfying, even if you're right. All right, so what else we got? We had that. You did touch on BitBoss before. Was there anything else you wanted to say about that? Because I think it's significant because is it the first sort of gaming gambling platform that's using BSV in a big way?
They're not the only one that is working on it, but they're the first one to actually deliver something. And I've spoken with the BitBoss guys a few times, and they're not a startup operation by any means. They've got a substantial development team. They've been working in the background on generic blockchain-related applications for gaming, and they were quite literally in stealth mode for years, working on this because they were waiting for a blockchain that could handle the kind of scale that they wanted.
How did they get onboarded?
And they found us. Apparently, they had been watching the whole hash war thing kind of play out.
That's really interesting.
They liked what we had to say about scaling, which is we need scale, and we need scale now. We need to have the capability and the limits lifted before people start building these applications, not wait until they built them and hit the wall.
Seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah. And I think it was from their point of view, because I mean, we didn't have to do any selling or convincing at all. Our first meeting, they were basically like, "Yep, all we're contacting you for is to open a channel in case we need a bit of technical advice or whatnot." So we've talked to them a little bit more about some other projects that they've sort of been working on in the background, which are not for me to reveal, but given them a few bits of helpful advice. They've helped us out a few times as well. So yeah, they're a real significant player, and I'm looking forward to seeing what more they've got to contribute to the community, as well as what they're going to contribute to the blockchain in terms of actual on-chain activity.
Yeah. And it's a bit more sophisticated than just like a simple gaming app too. They're using the tokenized platform. And I think you can play games in BSV, or you can play in a token that they've created, or even a custom token that a different project creates.
Yeah, I believe they offer a range of options there.
Yeah,
it's not just one gaming product that they're working on either. They're working on stuff, iGaming related stuff that's more in the kind of the physical realm and other things. So I would expect to see a ton of stuff coming out of BitBoss. They're probably going to be one of the first significant producers of on-chain transaction volume, I think, other than WeatherSV, of course.
Yeah. Kudos to WeatherSV too for getting so many transactions on the chain.
I've loved what they've been doing, and the only thing that's was ever worrying me about it was the sheer proportion of transactions.
Yeah, I never realized it was
coming out of them, but I've noticed that 2% gap that was left for all the other stuff has widened by almost an order of magnitude now. So we're in a pretty good spot. I had to present a little bit of the the progress report, I guess, for the ecosystem to some people last week. So I pulled up the charts from CoinDance, and it's actually it's a thing of beauty to look at. Starting around about April, I think this year, we just had this solid uptrend in the number of transactions, average number of transactions per block, and average block size. We passed Bitcoin Cash 3 months ago or something, and it wasn't fleeting. It was continuation of that solid uptrend. And so we stayed above them. We're now at about 50% of BTC on all of those metrics. The number of miners on BitcoinSV has increased by, well, I started off, I think, at about 4 or 5. We're up to about 15 are on the pie chart now. Bitcoin Core only has about 20. So yeah, I mean, to be producing, to go from where we were at the beginning of this year, which was 50 or 100 transactions a day, maybe, even less some days, and blocks of 2 to 5 kilobytes, to a very, very sustained 600 kilobyte average block size, and I can't remember the number. It's about an average of, I think, about 1,000 transactions per block, which compares to BTC's 2,000, which is a number that will never go up because their limits, they've hit their limit. So yeah, 0 to 50% in 7 months is fantastic in terms of the organic growth of BSV.
Yeah, it's been pretty impressive just to see how much has changed. I mean, even since I spoke to you back in May, seems much bigger all round.
I think growth is the growth curve is always a little bit exponential, and we've seen this I see this in lots of different realms. Development speed of a team, with the BitcoinSV node itself, the scaling of nChain internally, and the general growth of BitcoinSV. It sort of flatlines for a while, and then it just sort of starts to turn upwards, and then it just accelerates faster and faster. We're at that really exciting bit of the curve now, where the angle is starting to change.
All right. Well, that would have been a positive note to end on, but I wanted to ask you about the technical standards committee that was put out by the Bitcoin Association last week. But I also saw that applications closed on the 23rd of September, and that date's already passed by the time people are going to be watching this. So, I mean, it's too late to apply for a position, but you did want to talk about that anyway. Just to explain the reason for its existence, and what they mean by technical standards, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing to get understood, and the first thing that I want to say about any Bitcoin Association sponsored committee or whatnot is it's not a ruling body by any means. Any standards that it comes up with, obviously anyone in the ecosystem is perfectly free to ignore them and go and set another standard and compete. If we didn't have that principle, then we never would have had a choice between BHS and Betamax. But essentially, it's an evolution of the wallet workshops. We had the first wallet workshop early this year, and another one just a couple of months ago. The first one was enormously productive. It gave us paymail, but it was quite a small group. The second one was a bit of a larger group, and that kind of changed the dynamic a bit. It was still definitely productive. But what it ended up producing was almost an excessive abundance of ideas for new standards that there is a definite need for, that need to be worked on. And we were going to have a third wallet workshop in December, but that was basically the soonest that we could get it done. but we're just not kind of confident that we'll be able to make it a productive event in that sort of space of time, because there's so much work left undone from the last one. And one of the real challenges that we had was this was a bit of a revelation for us in Wallet Workshop 1. We came up with some ideas that were really quite interesting and potentially patentable.
Yeah.
And there was a kind of an odd discussion, because we had actually come up with some ideas independently in nChain before Wallet Workshop. And Ryan X Charles had actually come up with sort of similar ideas, and we were sort of planning on not talking about those at the Wallet Workshop, because we wanted to get patents on them and release them free for BSV usage. But basically the idea was a protective patent, so that it was only BSV that could make use of this technology. Ryan, of course, basically described our invention to us. Sort of like, okay, well, we either patent this together or we don't. And that sort of provoked a discussion amongst everybody there. And what was really interesting, it was this notion of no one in the room wanted to say that they were in favor of patenting stuff for BSV only.
Why is that?
Because I think we all still had a bit of a hangover from years and years of core and then BCH,
Right.
you know, anti-patents, patents are evil type thing. But it turned out one person said it first, one brave soul, and that just opened the floodgates. And all of a sudden everyone realized, oh, hang on, I'm not going to be the arsehole in the room if I say I'm okay with patents. And we went around the room and everyone was like, yes, this is a bloody great idea. Let's do this and protect it for BSV. And so, of course, the rules around patents are a little bit complicated. You've got to keep things confidential until, you know, certain things have been done, etc.
Yeah.
And that kind of complicates participation in these work groups a little bit, because you've got to get everyone to sort of sign a temporary NDA before they can come in, and before, you know, they don't know what they're signing the NDA for, because you can't tell them until they've signed. But you can sort of explain the process and the reason for it.
Yeah.
So whilst we really wanted to open all of this development of you know, Paymail and BIP 270 and other things up a lot more, we have that consideration to contend with. So in combination with the huge amount of work that that needs to get done with all of these standards, and wanting to deal with that, create an easy onboarding process so that we can cast the net wider to the whole community. There's a bit of boring admin process kind of stuff to be done, governance type stuff. Working out what the structure of these work groups are for the individual standards that needs to be worked on, so that multiple work groups can operate in parallel. But if you don't put a little bit of process and structure around those sorts of things, especially when it's all volunteer based, what you always find happens is some will sort of power ahead and get things done. They'll all do it in different ways that are incompatible, and some will just peter out and die off. So a little bit of process and structure and organization around that, I think, will help us to get the best out of it. And that's primarily what the Technical Standards Committee is there to do, is to sort of drive this kind of whole process forward. The more meaty work will be done by sort of subcommittees, I suppose, technical committees, who will actually sit and nut out these processes. Other things that we want to do is basically take over the wallet workshops and run these sorts of workshop things. We'll go beyond the scope of just wallets. There'll be workshops for all sorts of different things. So although it sounds a little bit bureaucratic and process heavy and boring, I actually think it will be a really good thing for BitcoinSV community. So I'd say to anyone that is interested that hasn't actually applied yet, there's definitely a role for a large number of people in the Bitcoin space to get involved in this. Every technical work group is going to require someone to lead it. You know, the standards committee itself may end up breaking into a more administrative body and a more technically technically oriented body to drive the roadmap. Yeah, if you are still interested, then yeah, it's not over and done with at this point. There'll be plenty of opportunities to become involved.
How many people are actually going to be on the committee? Have they decided that yet?
We haven't made any kind of final decisions yet, but it needs to be reasonably small to be effective, I think. I'm thinking it shouldn't be any more than 8.
Right.
But I guess that depends on the applications and whatnot. There's been quite a few come in, I believe. I haven't had a chance to look through any of them myself yet.
And it has to be people with a pretty solid technical background, as well as
a technical background, and I guess a solid understanding of how these kind of processes and structures work, I think, is also helpful. We did have one of the very early applications that I did have a chance to see with someone with a much more business-oriented background, but someone who has worked in standards committees and things like that before. So I think a mix of people is actually ideal.
Right.
People who do have strong technical backgrounds and people who have strong backgrounds in getting this sort of thing done.
Bureaucrats. Organizers. Systems people.
Well, effective bureaucrats, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the word bureaucrat itself doesn't really scream effectiveness, does it? It's just it's kind of an insult almost. But yes.
Yeah, it's gotten worse in my mind since I moved to the UK and had to deal with some of the civil service here. I think they invented bureaucracy here, or at least they perfected
I think they did.
it.
All right, so yes, that's definitely something that the Bitcoin Association is going to do. Just go to the bitcoinassociation.net website if you want to find out more about that. Like Steve said, the applications have closed for the first round, but there's definitely other roles people can play if they want to. I think that's about it. We're at 1.25 hours. That's longer than I said I'd keep you. And I just noticed it's like 3:30 in the morning over here. So there's a reason my brain's starting to turn into melted ice cream. So I'd better wrap it there. Unless there was anything else that you wanted to get out there. Remembering that it's going to be
I'm looking forward to seeing some people at CoinGeek. It's always
it's going to be awesome.
To get together with all my fellow geeks.
I look forward to seeing you all there too. All right then. Well, thanks a lot, Steve. And please do come back to the live stream again. You're always welcome, of course. All of you are. It's kind of a shame we can only have one of you here every month.
I'll look forward to another visit soon.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for the update. See you all at CoinGeek Seoul, and everyone else will see you around on YouTube and Streamanity, and of course, Twitter. Right. See you later, Steve.
All right. Cheers.